Welcome Amatale's Lab, where lying wives and sneaky girlfriends finally get exposed. From girls' trips that never happen to co-workers who are a little too friendly, we break down every red flag, messy receipt, and suspicious text with humor, shock, and just a little bit of petty. Expect wild stories, dramatic reactions, and satisfying karma as the truth comes crashing through the door. If you love relationship tea, plot twists, and seeing players get played, this channel is your new home. Every single chaotic, jaw-dropping, binge-worthy episode. Hit subscribe and never miss a fresh dose of exposed cheating. Don't forget to check our previous stories. Let's get into it. Malcolm Reed first saw Nia Brooks in a late-night grocery store in Houston, standing frozen in the cereal aisle as if the building had turned loud and dangerous. Her hands shook while she stared at her phone, the screen lighting up with message after message. When he asked, gently, if she was okay, she flinched like his voice was a raised hand. He backed up, palms open, and offered something simple. You do not have to answer, but you should not go home scared. Her eyes filled, and that was the first crack in the wall she had built to survive. Nia's ex-boyfriend, Darnell Price, had trained fear into her like a habit. It was not just bruises that healed. It was the way she apologized for breathing, the way she checked doors twice, the way her laughter sounded like it did not belong to her anymore. Malcolm drove her to a women's resource center instead of his place, because safety needed witnesses and structure, not romance. He waited in the parking lot while she talked to a counselor. When she came out, shoulders still tight, but chin slightly higher, she whispered, "Thank you for not trying to save me in a way that traps me." Over the next months, Malcolm did what he promised. He stayed consistent, not controlling. He helped her file for restraining order, replace her broken phone with a new number, and install better locks on her apartment. Only after she asked. He found a trauma therapist who specialized in intimate partner violence and offered to pay the co-pays with no questions. When nightmares woke her, he did not demand explanations or touch without permission. He simply sat on the edge of the bed and spoke quietly about ordinary things, rain, morning coffee, a song his mother used to hum, until her breathing slowed and the room felt safe again. Malcolm was not perfect. He just refused to be careless with someone else's pain. He learned her triggers, sudden footsteps behind her, shouting on television, the sound of a car idling too long. He learned the difference between comfort and pressure. When she canceled dates because her body said no, he did not punish her with silence. He brought takeout and left it at the door with a note. No reply needed. You are not alone. For the first time in years, Nia began to believe love could be gentle without being temporary. On an autumn afternoon, she told him the story in full. The first slap had come after Darnell accused her of flirting with a waiter. Then it became surveillance, isolation, apologies that were really threats. He took her paycheck, then her friendships, then her confidence, as if he was stripping a house of copper wire. When she tried to leave, he cried, promised change, and then punished her for hoping. Nia's voice stayed calm as she talked, but tears slid down like gravity had been waiting. Malcolm did not interrupt. He held a tissue box between them like a truce. Healing was not a straight path. It was a slow, uneven climb. Some days she felt powerful, going to work with her head up. Other days she shook in the bathroom. Certain Darnell would appear like a bad memory with legs. Malcolm helped her build routines. A self-defense class she chose, a small circle of friends she trusted, a new apartment farther from old streets. He taught her how to check her credit report and dispute accounts Darnell had opened in her name. Every practical step felt like taking territory back. Love arrived in the quiet spaces where fear used to live. Nia started laughing without checking the room first. She began singing along to radio, then dancing while she cooked. She stopped asking permission to have an opinion. Malcolm watched these changes like someone watching sunrise after a long storm. Careful not to claim credit for light he did not create. When she told him she loved him, it was not desperate or rushed. It was steady. You treated me like I was real, she said, not like a project. 2 years after that grocery store night, Malcolm proposed on a small pier in Galveston, where the water looked like it had kept secrets for centuries. He did not make a speech about rescuing her. He simply said, I want a life where we choose each other on purpose every day. Nia said yes and then cried, not from fear this time, but from relief that joy could exist without a price tag. They got married in a bright church in Houston, surrounded by people who had watched Nia become herself again. Marriage felt like a home they built together, plank by plank. Malcolm worked as a financial analyst for a growing logistics company, good at seeing patterns others missed. Nia, once afraid to be noticed, became a therapist in training, determined to help people climb out of darkness the way she had. They hosted game nights, saved for a house, started a small foundation that paid therapy costs for survivors. Malcolm loved how Nia spoke to clients with warmth and structure, never promising easy healing, only honest support. He told friends he married her strength, not her scars. For a long time, their story looked like the kind people post online with captions about faith and second chances. Nia's confidence deepened. Malcolm's pride softened into peace. They bought a home in a quiet Houston neighborhood, with a garden Nia insisted on planting as proof that things could grow again. When Nia awoke from nightmares, it happened less often, and she recovered faster. Malcolm believed they had crossed the worst of it. He believed the past stayed in the past when you did the work. He did not know some people keep old doors unlocked on purpose. The first sign was small enough to explain away. Nia started guarding her phone like it was fragile, turning the screen down when he walked near. She became oddly protective of her schedule, claiming confidential client matters even when she was not yet licensed. Malcolm told himself trauma can make privacy feel like oxygen. Then came a late-night call that ended the moment Malcolm entered the room. Nia smiled too quickly and said it was a friend from a group. Malcolm nodded, but a quiet alarm began to ring somewhere inside him. Weeks later, Malcolm found a receipt in the laundry, cash withdrawal from an ATM across town, one they never used. Nia said she needed cash to help a client who was leaving an abusive home. Malcolm respected the impulse to protect people, yet something about the story felt rehearsed. He wanted to believe her, because belief was part of the marriage vows in his mind. Still, he checked their bank history and saw several withdrawals in the past month, all in amounts that looked deliberate. When he asked again, softly, Nia's eyes turned sharp. "Why are you interrogating me?" she snapped. Malcolm apologized, though his gut did not. He tried to reset, to return to the man who never made her feel trapped. But the tension stayed like humidity. Nia began working late twice a week, coming home with fresh makeup and a brightness that did not match exhaustion. She bought new lingerie Malcolm never saw her wear. She started taking weekend retreats with colleagues he had never met. One evening, Malcolm reached for her hand at dinner, and she pulled away as if touch was an inconvenience. That was when the fear came, not fear of violence, but fear of being foolish. He did not want to become the kind of husband who spies for peace of mind. Yet peace of mind was already gone. Malcolm suggested marriage counseling. Nia agreed too fast, then missed the first appointment because of an emergency. She missed the second because her phone died. At the third, she sat stiff and charming, speaking in therapy language that sounded correct, but empty. She said Malcolm was controlling when he asked about her whereabouts. The counselor looked at him with polite caution. Malcolm felt himself being painted as a threat in a story he had spent years trying to heal. One night, Malcolm woke up and realized Nia was not in bed. He heard a soft voice in the kitchen, a whisper that carried a tone he had not heard from her in months. Intimate, playful, familiar. When he stepped into the hallway, the whisper stopped. Nia appeared, phone in hand, eyes wide, and said she was just checking on a client. Malcolm watched her thumb hover over the screen like it was about to delete something. His chest tightened. He did not argue. He went back to bed, stared at the ceiling, and listened to his own heart learn a new rhythm. Suspicion. The next morning, Malcolm called in sick and sat in his car outside the house, ashamed of himself and also desperate. Nia left in workout clothes, but instead of driving toward the wellness center she claimed to visit, she headed across town. He followed at a distance, hands sweating against the steering wheel. She parked behind a strip mall and walked to a silver sedan. A man stepped out. Even from far away, Malcolm recognized the posture, the same arrogant lean he had seen in courtroom photos and police reports years ago. Darnell Price opened his arms. Nia walked into them like they were home. Malcolm did not storm out. He did not scream. He sat in his car as if his body had turned into stone and watched Darnell kiss her forehead, slow and possessive. Nia smiled up at him with an expression Malcolm had once believed he helped bring back to life. Darnell said something that made her laugh. Then she climbed into his car. Malcolm's vision blurred, not from tears yet, but from shock. He felt betrayed in a way that made every memory spin. It was not just cheating. It was a return of the very ghost they built their marriage to escape. Malcolm drove home and vomited in the sink. Then he sat at the kitchen table and wrote down every detail he could remember: time, location, car make, direction. He thought about how many times he had sat up with Nia during panic attacks about Darnell. How many times he had held her hand while she signed paperwork to protect herself. How many nights he had been gentle on purpose. The betrayal did not arrive alone. It brought humiliation, rage, and grief like a crowd. Yet beneath all of it was a colder realization. If she could lie this well, he needed truth documented, not guessed. Malcolm hired a private investigator the next day, choosing someone who specialized in infidelity and financial deception. He did not tell Nia. He told himself he was protecting his future, because love without truth is just a cage with flowers on it. The investigator's first report came quickly. Photos of Nia entering a motel off the freeway with Darnell. The date stamped the image like a verdict. The second report showed them meeting multiple times, in different places, like it was a routine. Malcolm's hands shook as he scrolled through evidence. He was not looking for pain, but pain was what he found. Then the deeper blow landed. The investigator uncovered that Darnell was using Nia's name to apply for a business loan, and a credit line had already been opened. Nia's signature appeared on digital forms, crisp and confident. Malcolm pulled their foundation's financial statements and saw missing funds. Small at first, then larger, disguised as client emergency support. The money had been wired to an account tied to Darnell's cousin. Malcolm felt his rage shift into something sharper. Cheating was one kind of betrayal. Turning his compassion into a bank for man who abused her was another. It made his kindness feel like someone else's weapon. Malcolm met with an attorney in downtown Houston and brought a folder thick with evidence. He learned what he could do, what he could prove, and how to protect himself legally without turning into a villain. He also met with a forensic accountant to map the financial trail. Every professional he hired looked at him with the same expression, sympathy mixed with astonishment. Malcolm did not want sympathy. He wanted clarity. He wanted to end the marriage cleanly and make sure Nia could not twist the narrative into a story where he was a monster and she was the wounded hero again. At home, Nia continued acting as if life was normal, which somehow hurt more than tears would have. She kissed Malcolm on the cheek like a habit, asked about his day, and said she was proud of him for always being so steady. Malcolm listened and heard performance instead of love. He watched her eyes for guilt and found only calculation. When she mentioned a conference in Dallas, Malcolm nodded and said he hoped she learned a lot. That night, he lay beside her and felt like he was sleeping next to a stranger wearing his wife's face. His anger was no longer hot. It was organized. Malcolm planned his revenge without violence, because he refused to let betrayal turn him into the thing he despised. First, he quietly opened a separate bank account and moved his paycheck deposits. Second, he froze their shared credit, notified the bank of suspected fraud, and documented every step. Third, he protected the foundation. He transferred control to a board member and locked down spending with dual authorization. It felt like ripping out roots, but he did it anyway. He also scheduled their next foundation gala at a hotel ballroom in Houston, an event Nia loved because it made her feel admired and redeemed. The plot twist revealed itself 2 days before the gala, when the investigator delivered one final detail. Nia and Darnell had been in contact long before Malcolm ever met her. Years ago, Nia had filed a police report against Darnell, but the report was never pursued because she stopped cooperating. The investigator found messages in an old cloud backup, legally obtained through discovery, that showed Nia and Darnell planning a fresh start with a good man who will pay for therapy and a house. Malcolm read the line twice, then a third time, as if repetition could make it less real. Nia had not just relapsed into an old pattern. She had rehearsed him. The night of the gala, Nia wore a sleek dress and smiled like a woman who believed the world owed her applause. Malcolm wore a calm expression that felt like armor. The ballroom glittered with donors, colleagues, and couples who admired their story. A large screen behind the stage displayed a slideshow of the foundation's work. Survivors supported, therapy sessions funded, lives stabilized. Nia squeezed Malcolm's hand and whispered, "Look what we built." Malcolm looked at the crowd, then at her, and thought, "You built a mask. I built receipts." When it was time for speeches, Malcolm took the microphone first. He thanked donors, praised the importance of honest support, and spoke about how manipulation can hide behind the language of healing. Nia smiled, assuming he was being inspirational. Then Malcolm nodded to the AV technician. The slideshow changed. The screen displayed a timeline, dates, bank transfers, photos of Nia and Darnell enter motels, the loan applications, the wire transfers, and a screenshot message about finding a good man. A murmur rippled through the room, like wind through dry leaves. Nia's smile collapsed into a stunned, tight stare. Nia stepped toward him, whispering urgently, "Malcolm, stop. Please." Her voice sounded like panic, not remorse. Malcolm kept his tone level for the microphone. "This foundation exists to protect real survivors," he said, "not to finance abusers or reward deception." He did not call her names. He did not shout. He let facts do the damage. Then he held up an envelope and said, "Nia Brooks, you've been served." The attorney standing near the aisle confirmed the paperwork. Donors watched, faces shocked. Some looked away. Others looked at Nia with a new, uncomfortable understanding. The story they admired had been sold to them. Nia tried to turn it, right there in the spotlight. She cried, saying Darnell forced her back, that she was scared, that Malcolm did not understand trauma. Malcolm let her speak, then handed the microphone to the investigator, who calmly explained the financial trail and the pre-marriage messages. It was the cleanest kind of revenge, truth with documentation. Nia's tears shifted into anger when she realized the room was not buying it. Darnell, who had slipped into the back of the ballroom expecting to watch her shine, tried to leave. Security stopped him. Police were already on the way because fraud is not a private betrayal. It is a public crime. The divorce moved fast after that. The evidence protected Malcolm from false accusations and protected his assets from being drained. Nia lost her position at the clinic for ethical violations tied to the missing funds. The loan application triggered an investigation that reached Darnell's network, and he faced charges that had nothing to do with Malcolm's feelings and everything to do with law. Malcolm did not celebrate. He grieved the man he had been, hopeful, trusting, proud of their love story. But he also felt something return, his dignity. He redirected the recovered funds into foundation under stricter oversight, determined that compassion would not be stolen again. Months later, Malcolm sat on his back porch in Houston, watching the garden Nia once planted begin to bloom under his care alone. He realized his revenge was not just exposure. It was reclaiming the life he built without letting bitterness poison it. He started therapy, too, because betrayal leaves bruises no one sees. And slowly, he learned that being kind was not his mistake. Trusting someone who weaponized kindness was. Nia's last message arrived one evening. "I never thought you would do this to me." Malcolm deleted it without replying. The plot twist was not that she cheated. It was that he finally chose himself. If you enjoyed this story, please comment, and share this video with your friends. Subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you never miss a powerful story drop.